Ever heard of a bomb that never explodes? For over 4 decades, that's exactly what this was.
Israel is still engaged in a war on another front, Gaza.
A war no one declared. Conflict too dangerous to name. It sat there, silent, humming, invisible to most of the world. Until June 2025, when someone finally lit the fuse. Welcome to DZ's Studios, and today we dive into the stories buried beneath headlines. And this one? It's been smoldering for years. In the dead of night, Israeli warplanes breached Iranian airspace in a lightning-fast assault. Moments later, explosions rocked Tehran, Kashan, and Isfahan. Before sunrise, Iran fired back. Hundreds of ballistic missiles raining down on Israeli cities. Oil depots ignited. Power grids collapsed. Civilians fled into darkness. The world didn't just witness a war, it watched a secret rivalry burst into flames. But here's the thing, this wasn't sudden. This war had already been raging in whispers, scientists killed in daylight traffic, drones with no flags, computer viruses that melted uranium. For years, both sides played a dangerous game in the shadows. But now, there's no more pretending, no more deniability, just two bitter enemies locked in open combat while the world holds its breath. Markets are crashing, diplomats are fleeing, children sleep in bunkers while fighter jets roar overhead. And yet, no one seems to know the most terrifying part. Why now? What broke the balance? And how does this end, if it even can? This is the full story of betrayal, bombs, nuclear brinkmanship, and the war that finally stepped out of the dark. It happened in the dark, just after midnight, on June 13th, 2025. The hum of jet engines echoed through the skies above Iran. Then came the first explosions. Natanz, Kashan, the outskirts of Tehran, all hit within minutes. Over 120 Israeli warplanes had crossed the border. Their mission was clear: destroy Iran's nuclear sites, missile factories, and hidden bunkers before they could be used. The operation had a name: Rising Lion, but it felt more like a thunderclap, one that didn't stop echoing. Natanz, Iran's most protected nuclear site, was hit hard. Satellite photos showed the facility cracked open, entire chambers buried under dust and debris. Iran's top scientists, some of its most guarded assets, were gone in seconds.
Why are you targeting the scientists? Why
They were part of the criminal element that is destined to destroy Israel.
By morning, over 70 were confirmed dead. Hundreds more were injured. Hospitals in Isfahan were overwhelmed, and the skies above Qom were black with smoke from burning oil depots. But the shock didn't last long. By the time the sun came up, Iran had already hit back. Over 350 missiles launched in one night, along with swarms of drones. Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ashdod. Sirens screamed across Israel. The Iron Dome and Arrow 3 systems lit up the sky, intercepting most of the missiles, but not all. A shopping mall in Tel Aviv took a direct hit. 2 people were killed. Dozens more were rushed to emergency rooms. In nearby towns, broken glass and burning cars filled the streets. Schools closed, trauma centers overflowed, and the war, now undeniable, was fully underway. Then came the second wave. On June 14th, Israeli F-35S struck deep into Tehran again. This time, a high-rise apartment building. The images were everywhere. Crushed walls, a bloodied teddy bear, parents screaming for their children, 60 civilians dead. 18 of them were kids. Iran's military fired back with surface-to-air missiles, but most of the jets escaped untouched. That same night, more Israeli bombs fell on fuel storage in Qom and missile depots near Isfahan. The fires could be seen from space. By June 15th, the numbers were grim. Over 400 Iranians dead, at least 110 of them civilians. On the Israeli side, 24 civilians killed, nearly 100 more injured. It was the bloodiest week either country had seen in over 50 years. The world watched in disbelief. The headlines called it the 5-day firestorm, but it wasn't just about missiles anymore. There were no peace talks, no secret deals, no red lines left to cross, just one terrifying question hanging in the air. Why now? What finally snapped and turned a long, quiet hatred into a war no one can control? While the world was still trying to process the missiles falling on Tel Aviv and the firestorms over Tehran, one superpower had already joined the fight. On June 14th, just one day after the first Israeli bombs dropped, US President Donald Trump stepped in front of cameras for an emergency announcement. Standing beside top Pentagon officials, he confirmed what many feared. The US wasn't just watching, it had been involved from the start. Then came the twist. America had launched its own strikes. B-2 stealth bombers had slipped into Iranian airspace under the cover of darkness, hitting what officials called classified nuclear assets. Hours later, shaky phone footage flooded social media, flashes lighting up the skies near Iraq and the Zagros Mountains, then rumbling, then silence. Details were scarce, but Pentagon leaks told the story. One target was a suspected uranium metal lab near Iraq. The other, a deep, hidden facility buried beneath the mountains. Satellite images showed massive craters and scorched earth. But the real message was clear. The US had just drawn its own line in the sand. At the White House, Trump called it a preemptive act of self-defense. "We will not allow a nuclear Iran," he said. "We acted with our allies to prevent a global threat." But in Tehran, it looked like something else entirely. Iran's leaders called it a declaration of war. The supreme leader vowed revenge. Iran's ambassador to the UN accused the US of violating every rule of international law. Across Iran, state media played looped footage of smoke trails and collapsed buildings, framing the US as the aggressor, not the peacekeeper, and the world split. Russia called the US strikes reckless. China urged calm. European leaders tried scrambling diplomacy back together, but by then, the markets were already panicking. Oil shot up to $180 a barrel overnight. Investors dumped stocks. OPEC held emergency calls. Airlines rerouted flights away from the Gulf. The region wasn't just on fire, it was collapsing under pressure. And back in America, the country was divided. Some hailed the move. Others warned that the US had just walked into another war it couldn't walk out of. By June 16th, the signs were everywhere. US destroyers moved into the Persian Gulf. Bases in Bahrain and Qatar went on high alert. 5,000 new troops were deployed, and off the coast of Israel, American warships began shadowing Israeli vessels, not to fight, but just in case they had to. But beneath all the headlines and press briefings, one chilling truth began to take hold. This wasn't just Israel versus Iran anymore. This was something bigger, and if peace talks failed, the next missile could come from anywhere. To understand why missiles are flying in 2025, you have to go back, not just a few years, but nearly 5 decades, because this war didn't begin in the sky. It started with a friendship and ended in betrayal. Yes, once upon a time, Israel and Iran were allies. In the 1960s and 70s, they worked together in secret. Israeli engineers helped Iran build farms in the desert. Mossad and Iran's Savak shared intelligence. The Shah of Iran bought weapons from Tel Aviv. They didn't have much in common, except for one thing. They both distrusted the Arab world more than each other. But that changed overnight. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution swept the Shah out of power and replaced him with Ayatollah Khomeini, a religious hardliner who rewrote Iran's entire foreign policy. The US was now the Great Satan, and Israel, the Little Satan. Embassies were shut down. Flags were burned. It wasn't just about policy, it was personal. In Lebanon, Iran helped build Hezbollah from the ground up. In Gaza, it backed Hamas. In Iraq, it armed militias. In Yemen, it sent weapons to the Houthis. These weren't just allies, they were chess pieces, forming a shadow army around Israel's borders. And Israel stopped waiting. In 1981, Israeli jets bombed Iraq's Sirak nuclear reactor before Saddam could build a bomb. The world was shocked. shocked. Israel called it survival. That strike-first mindset didn't stop there. It extended straight to Iran. By the early 2000s, strange things kept happening inside Iran. Scientists disappeared, cars exploded, entire nuclear labs went dark. Western intel pointed to Mossad, and in 2010, a virus called Stuxnet hit Iranian centrifuges so precisely it destroyed them without a single bullet fired. It was cyber war, and no one took credit. Then came hope. In 2015, the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, was signed. Iran agreed to slow down enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief. For a moment, the world exhaled. But peace didn't last. In 2018, under President Trump, the US pulled out. Sanctions slammed back into place. Iran felt cheated and started speeding up again. By 2023, uranium was being enriched to 84% purity. That's just shy of weapons grade. At the same time, both countries moved further apart. In Iran, the rise of hardliner Ebrahim Raisi crushed any talk of compromise. In Israel, the election of far-right Prime Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir in 2024 lit a fuse. His message? We won't wait. We won't die quietly. Between 2020 and 2025, the region lit up with more than 200 proxy clashes. Iranian-backed militias fired rockets into the Golan Heights. Israel bombed Damascus. Hezbollah stockpiled smart missiles. Gaza burned, and the line between indirect and direct war slowly vanished. Back channels opened. Switzerland, Oman, quiet talks, secret meetings, all failed. By early 2025, one truth stood above all the wreckage. The Cold War was over, and the next one would be fought in the open. From 2020 to early 2025, Israel and Iran were already at war, just not the kind that makes the evening news. There were no battle tanks, no flags, no official declarations, just explosions in the night, silent drones, and cyber attacks that made entire cities flicker and fade. It was a war fought in shadows, quiet, constant, and everywhere at once. In Syria, Israeli fighter jets launched over 300 airstrikes. Their targets? Iranian weapons convoys, missile labs, Quds Force outposts. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew who was behind it. Iran shouted. Russia protested. Assad said nothing. The bombs kept falling, but the battlefield was growing. In April 2022, an Iranian drone crossed into Israeli airspace and struck a military post near the Golan Heights. Damage was minimal, but it was the first time Tehran had directly hit Israeli soil. Within 48 hours, Israeli jets flattened drone factories near Kermanshah. Message received. Then came August 2023. Iran's nuclear facility in Isfahan was rocked by an explosion. A mystery group claimed credit, but the precision was too sharp, too surgical. Western intel quietly pointed to Israel. No admission, no denial, just a crater and silence. The war moved online. In early 2024, Iranian hackers attacked Israel's power grid. Lights went out across Haifa and the Negev. Emergency lines crashed. It lasted only hours, but it was enough to send a chill. A week later, Israel struck back digitally. Iranian oil tankers vanished from international tracking systems. Dozens of shipments worth millions simply disappeared. This wasn't just sabotage, it was a warning. And all across the Middle East, things got hotter. In Yemen, Iran-backed Houthis fired anti-ship missiles into the Red Sea. One landed less than 20 miles from an Israeli cargo vessel. In Iraq, popular mobilization forces got into a gunfight near the Green Zone. Baghdad called it terrorism. Tel Aviv called it intelligence work. And in Lebanon, Hezbollah sent dozens of drones over Israeli skies. Some were shot down, others weren't. In Gaza, the rockets started again. Over 150 fired in just 3 days. The Iron Dome stopped most, but the message was clear. Iran's proxies weren't just awake, they were in sync. To the outside world, it looked like random chaos, but to military experts, it looked like a Cold War in full motion, a quiet test of red lines, a chess match with missiles. Then Then came March 2025. The diplomacy snapped. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, cut off all secret talks with the West, calling them mouthpieces for Zionism. The same week, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant gave a chilling warning on live TV. We won't wait. We'll strike first. We'll strike hard. And we'll strike anywhere. By May, Israeli jets were bombing Syria almost daily. Hezbollah drones flew into Israeli airspace every single week. The region had become what one commander called a matchstick factory soaked in gasoline. And on June 13th, 2025, someone lit the match. Missiles are flying, cities are burning, and the world is stuck asking one terrifying question: what happens next? Because despite the airstrikes, the headlines, and the chaos, this war is far from over. In fact, it may have just begun. Within 72 hours, UN resolutions were ignored. Peace talks collapsed. Western embassies scrambled to evacuate. Now, every global superpower is trying to figure out what's worse, stepping in or letting it burn. US destroyers patrol the Persian Gulf. Russian jets shadow NATO aircraft over the Mediterranean. China has moved a carrier group closer to the Arabian Sea under the excuse of humanitarian oversight. Everyone's watching, everyone's tense, and no one wants to be the next to get pulled in. Meanwhile, Iran is moving quietly. Weapons are being redeployed across Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Hezbollah is on high alert. The Houthis are threatening to shut down shipping routes in the Red Sea. If that happens, oil prices could double overnight, pushing the global economy into crisis. And Israel? They've said this ends only one way, with Iran's nuclear program completely destroyed. But what does completely mean? You can flatten a building, sure, but you can't bomb knowledge. Nuclear science doesn't vanish with rubble. That's the problem. This chase has no clear finish line. Then there's the unspoken threat, the one hanging over everything like a storm cloud, the nuclear question. Iran still insists its program is peaceful, but Western intelligence says otherwise. Enrichment has resumed deep underground in hardened bunkers untouched by Israeli bombs. Some experts say Iran could assemble a bomb in 6 months. Others believe they already have. For Israel, even a 1% chance is too much. That's why analysts fear the next phase won't just involve jets and drones, but bunker-busting bombs, strategic airfields, and maybe even new players entering the fight. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, maybe more. In Tel Aviv, families still sleep in bomb shelters. In Tehran, gas stations run out of fuel before noon. World leaders go on camera with bold statements while their advisors talk behind closed doors about worst-case scenarios. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous, because sometimes wars don't escalate through big speeches or planned offensives. Sometimes they explode because of a misread radar signal, a wrong turn, a single missile hitting the wrong building. So, what comes next? Will this spiral stop? Will a secret ceasefire be brokered in some quiet hotel far from the cameras? Or is this just the first act in something much larger, a Middle East war that refuses to stay in the Middle East? We've seen this pattern before, but this time there are nuclear warheads, cyber weapons, regional alliances, and no one seems to know how to stop it. In just 7 days, the Middle East was rewritten. Over 600 lives lost, thousands wounded, cities scarred. What was once a silent struggle in cyberspace and back channels has exploded into a full-scale war, loud, messy, and dangerously unstable. But this isn't just about missiles or territory. It's about something deeper: ideology, fear, and control. It's the collapse of diplomacy, the failure of red lines, and the return of old ghosts from 1979 that the world never truly buried. Treaties didn't hold, sanctions didn't stop it, and the systems built to prevent a war like this, they've all fallen apart. Now, with nukes in the conversation and proxy forces in motion, the scariest part isn't what we've seen, it's what we haven't. No one knows how this ends. Maybe there's a ceasefire, maybe there's escalation, or maybe it all comes down to one miscalculation, one missile too far, one ego too proud, one moment too late. Because wars don't follow scripts. rifts, and history has shown just how fast a regional fire can become a global one. So, what happens next? Peace? Prolonged chaos? Or just another quiet pause before the next explosion? No one can say for sure, but one thing is already certain. The war might be over there between nations, across borders, in deserts and skies. But the consequences? They're already here.